There is a quiet wound inside every human heart, one that surfaces the moment we allow ourselves to be seen fully. To reveal your deepest vulnerability is to stand naked before the world, to show the raw edges of your soul without apology. And yet the very people you trust may turn away, or worse, strike at the place they were once invited to honor. This is the painful truth. Betrayal often follows openness, not because you did something wrong, but because the shadow in others resents the light you carry. It is not a reflection of your worth, but a mirror of their fear. In this awakening, you will learn to see the patterns, to understand the unspoken dynamics, and to reclaim your inner power. Watch till the end, hit subscribe, and remember, the real change begins now. Have you ever left a conversation feeling smaller than when it began, as though someone quietly reached inside you and pulled the air from your lungs? Maybe it was a friend, a parent, or even a partner. They didn't insult you, they didn't raise their voice. Yet, after being with them, you feel tired in a way that coffee can't fix. Carl Jung often spoke about the unconscious patterns that shape our relationships. Many of these patterns come from childhood, where you learned, without realizing it, how to earn love, how to stay safe, and how to avoid rejection. If you grew up feeling you had to be the caretaker, the peacemaker, or the one who never upset anyone, you might now attract people who expect you to give without limit. This is how emotional drainers are born. Not because they are bad people, but because unconsciously both of you are playing out old roles. One needs to take, the other feels compelled to give. Your nervous system recognizes this as familiar, even if it hurts you. That's why you stay. The hidden dynamic here is often tied to what Jung called the shadow, the parts of yourself you learned to suppress. Maybe as a child, you pushed away your anger or your need for boundaries because they weren't welcome. So now, as an adult, you avoid conflict at all costs, even if it means letting people slowly empty you. When you finally see this pattern, something shifts. You realize it's not just about the other person. It's about the part of you that believes love must be earned through exhaustion. That belief was planted long ago, and it's been quietly shaping your relationships ever since. Becoming aware of this is the first step toward what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. It begins when you reclaim the parts of yourself you abandoned, your right to say no, your need for rest, your anger that says, "This is too much." When you see the pattern clearly, you stop confusing depletion with connection. And slowly you begin to choose differently. Have you ever stayed in a relationship, a job, or even a friendship long after it began draining you? Not because you wanted to, but because the thought of leaving filled you with guilt? It's not weakness. It's not a lack of courage. It's something deeper, an invisible weight inside you that says, if I walk away, I am selfish, I am ungrateful, I am bad. Carl Jung spoke about how the unconscious governs much of human behavior. Often, the guilt you feel today didn't start with the person in front of you. It started long before, in childhood, when your nervous system learned to keep you safe by keeping you pleasing. Maybe you were praised for being the good child, the one who never caused trouble. Or maybe love felt conditional, withdrawn when you upset someone, returned only when you complied. This early conditioning plants a powerful emotional memory that your worth is tied to how well you meet others' expectations. So as an adult, when you consider setting boundaries or walking away, the old fear resurfaces. Your body reacts as if you're breaking a sacred law. Anxiety, shame, even panic might rise up, and so you stay, not out of love, but out of guilt. Jung would call this a confrontation with the shadow, the part of you carrying unspoken anger, resentment, and the quiet longing to choose yourself. Because the good persona you show the world says, I am loyal, I am selfless. But behind it, Your shadow whispers, "I am tired. I want freedom." You hide that part because you learned early on it would make others upset. Here lies the hidden belief. If I disappoint people, I will lose love. That belief keeps you chained long after the relationship stops nourishing you. The moment you finally see this dynamic, something shifts. You realize the guilt was never about the present moment. It was the echo of a child's fear of losing safety and belonging. As an adult, you can question it. You can ask, is loyalty still noble if it destroys me? Awareness doesn't make leaving easy, but it breaks the unconscious spell. And that is the beginning of what Jung called individuation. The slow, honest work of becoming someone whole rather than someone controlled by old fears. Have you ever noticed how the idea of walking away can feel heavier than staying in a situation that hurts you? Even when you know deep down it's time to leave, a friendship, a relationship, or even a family dynamic, something inside resists. Your body tenses, your chest tightens. It feels like betrayal, even when you are the one being hurt. Carl Jung often pointed out that much of our inner conflict comes from the unconscious, the parts of ourselves shaped by childhood conditioning. As a child, you may have learned that leaving was dangerous, that it meant you were selfish or ungrateful. Maybe you watched people fall apart when someone left, or you felt responsible for keeping the peace, holding everything together. Those early experiences wrote emotional laws into your nervous system. Stay, even if it costs you. So as an adult, when a relationship drains your spirit, you stay longer than you should. Not because you want to, but because the old conditioning whispers, leaving makes you the bad one. Here lies the paradox Jung would point to. The very thing you fear, walking away, is often the moment when your real power begins to surface. Because the self you show the world, what Jung called the persona, is often built on being pleasing, accommodating, or endlessly available. Walking away threatens that image. It forces you to confront the part of you, the shadow, that carries anger, boundaries, and self-respect. The parts you buried to keep others comfortable. The hidden belief is this: my worth depends on keeping others happy, even at my own expense. That belief keeps you small, tied to roles you didn't consciously choose. But when you finally see it, you realize something important. Walking away is not just about leaving someone else. It is about leaving behind the version of you that lived in fear of displeasing people. It is an act of individuation, the process Jung described as becoming whole, reclaiming the power and dignity you gave away to keep love or approval. It will not feel easy at first. It may even feel like loss. But what you are losing is the weight of old conditioning. What you are gaining is yourself. When you finally walk away from what was draining you, the first thing you often feel isn't freedom, it's emptiness. The noise stops, the constant demands disappear, and suddenly there is nothing but silence. For many people, this silence feels unbearable. You wonder, did I make a mistake? Carl Jung wrote about how the unconscious seeks wholeness, yet at first it often feels like loss. That's because so much of your identity was tied to those old roles: the caretaker, the peacemaker, the one who kept everyone else together. Without them, you feel exposed, like there is no clear you left. This is where childhood conditioning shows itself again. If, as a child, you were always defined by what you did for others, being helpful, responsible, or quiet, so others wouldn't be upset, then rest and solitude can feel wrong. Your nervous system is wired for constant doing, constant giving. When all of that stops, the silence feels like abandonment, even though nothing is actually wrong. But here is what Jung understood. The emptiness is not punishment. It is space. Space that was never yours before, because it was always filled with other people's needs, other people's voices, other people's expectations. At first, your mind will want to fill it again. Maybe with new relationships, distractions, or constant busyness. That's because the persona you built, the false self the world praised, doesn't know how to exist without noise and validation. But beneath that persona lives the self, the part Jung described as the center of your being, the part that holds your instincts, your creativity, your unlived life. The hidden belief you are confronting here is this: if I am not needed, I have no value. That belief kept you running, giving, pleasing. But now, in the quiet, you see it for what it is. An echo from childhood, not the truth of who you are. Rebuilding the inner temple means learning to be with yourself without fear. It means letting solitude become a teacher rather than an enemy. Slowly, you begin to notice what brings you joy when no one else is watching, what gives you peace when no one else is demanding. This is how individuation begins, not in noise, but in the quiet space where you finally meet yourself. Have you noticed how some relationships feel like a constant performance, while others feel like you can finally exhale? When you step away from the ones that drain you, there's a quiet fear. What if I end up alone? But something unexpected begins to happen. Over time, people who resonate with your real self, not the role you played, start to appear. Carl Jung often explained that the relationships you attract reflect the parts of yourself you either embrace or deny. If you were always the giver, you likely attracted those who only knew how to take. If you suppressed anger to avoid conflict, you may have drawn in people who pushed past your boundaries. This isn't conscious choice. It's the unconscious recreating familiar emotional patterns from childhood, even if they hurt you. So when you finally walk away, you're not just leaving people. You're breaking the old emotional agreements written in your nervous system. Agreements that said love equals self-abandonment or closeness means carrying someone else's chaos. Those beliefs were formed when you were too young to question them. At first, the quiet after leaving feels empty because the old roles are gone. But slowly, something changes. Without the weight of constant giving, you begin to notice your own needs, your own voice, your own limits. And here's the paradox Jung would highlight. Only when you stop abandoning yourself do you stop attracting people who ask you to. The hidden belief driving the old pattern was this: if I set boundaries, I will lose love. But the reality is that boundaries don't repel the right people, they reveal them. The ones who only valued your compliance will fade. The ones who value your wholeness will stay. This is what Jung called individuation in action. As you integrate your shadow, the anger, the needs, the self-respect you once buried, you show up in relationships as a whole person, not a mask. And whole people connect differently. Real connection doesn't drain you. It doesn't demand constant self-betrayal. It feels like expansion, like two nervous systems meeting without the weight of old roles or hidden bargains. The more you align with your authentic self, the less space there is for relationships built on exhaustion. What remains is not many people, but the right ones. The ones who meet you where you truly are. Have you noticed how every step, leaving, grieving, rebuilding, slowly leads you back to something deeper? At first, it feels like this entire journey was about other people, the ones who drained you, the ones you couldn't say no to, the ones you kept trying to please. But as the noise fades, you begin to see the real story wasn't about them at all. It was about you. Carl Jung described the self as the central point of the psyche, the place where all the parts of you, conscious and unconscious, finally come into alignment. But for most of your life, you've been pulled in opposite directions. What others expect, what your childhood conditioning demands, what your own quiet instincts have been trying to tell you. It leaves you feeling split, unsure which version of you is real. This is why Jung believed individuation, the process of becoming whole, is often triggered by suffering. The relationships that drained you revealed the unconscious patterns running your life. Maybe you were taught as a child to suppress anger, to overachieve, to stay small, or to avoid conflict at all costs. These lessons got wired into your nervous system as survival strategies. So, as an adult, you built a persona, the polite, pleasing, responsible self that kept you accepted, but also kept you disconnected from your deeper needs. The shadow, all the parts you pushed away, like your boundaries, your grief, your anger, even your desires, stayed buried, shaping your life from underneath. The turning point comes when you finally see the hidden belief driving it all. My worth depends on who I am for others, not who I am within myself. That belief has been running silently for years, guiding choices, relationships, even the way you talk to yourself. Individuation begins the moment you question it. When you integrate the shadow, when you stop apologizing for your needs, when you live from your own center instead of someone else's approval. This is the return to self Jung spoke of. And here is the awakening. Freedom was never about leaving others behind. It was about leaving behind the false self that kept you disconnected from your own life. What remains is not emptiness, but wholeness, the quiet strength of finally belonging to yourself.